Hey everyone, welcome to the Downloadable Podcast. This week we're going to talk about the She-Hulk, what we've been playing and watching, our thoughts on storytelling, and keeping with continuity of things that exist before versus after. We hope you enjoy. So let's get into the episode, guys. Well, speaking of network connection, man, I've been having nothing but trouble playing Tekken because of our network at home. And
oh yeah.
Just called AT&T and they're like, yeah, there's something wrong. We see it on our end that there's some kind of interference between our site to your house. So I'm like, I'm only able to get like 21 megabytes per second upload speed.
No, that sucks.
And then my download speed fluctuates. I'm like, but I have fiber. Why am I having
Dude, supposedly we've got fiber too, and there'll be times where we were watching over the last 2 days we were watching all the House of Dragon stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
And as it was going along, there'd be some times where HBO would just start spinning, and we're like, why is it doing this? There's no reason it should be doing this. Just sits there, and then it'll hop out. You got to close out the episode, and then you can immediately jump back in, and you're fine. But I don't know, man.
So it's one of those things because I know that this weekend I picked up, of course, this year.
Oh, nice. I need to go get it.
Don't get it on the Switch. Get it on the.
Don't get it on the Switch.
Don't get it on the Switch. Get it either on the PlayStation or the Xbox, whatever one you have.
Why?
Reason being is because there's something wrong with the net code with the multiplayer.
No, I don't play a lot of stuff online, so I don't give a shit. All my stuff I just play locally. There it goes. God damn it. I meant to restart the computer that had this stupid light plugged into, and I shut it down instead, and it took a shit on me. There we go. God damn it.
Yeah, so basically we tried to play it Friday. Me, Ryan, Jose, and BFG. And when all four of us connected, it was slow as hell. I mean, it was so laggy. So we tried to do it where if we split off between just two people playing together, it seemed to work fine. And then, but we tried 3 people and it still was laggy as hell. So I went and looked up and found out that a lot of people were complaining, and there's apparently something wrong with, I guess, the net code or something with the game.
I mean, the Switch isn't exactly known for having the best net code in general for most of their stuff.
Well, I can jump on Smash Brothers. I can jump on Mario Kart, and those work great. I can jump on to the Turtles Shredder's Revenge, and that works great.
But Smash Brothers hasn't always been that way. Smash Brothers started out
that's
garbage.
True. So I don't know, and that's one of the things that made me kind of think that there's something wrong on my end. And I have an Ethernet. I have a Cat 6 cable plugged directly from my modem to my PS5. There's no reason why I should have any kind of latency or lag or whatever in any of my stuff. So
yeah,
but I haven't been able to get any kind of steady connection between any of my systems, regardless of the Ethernet cable. So they said that they're going to call us tomorrow because they pushed something out to see if it would fix the issue. If that doesn't work, they're going to send a technician out to check the line and probably replace the modem. But we were looking online. Apparently, the gigabit, 1,000 megabits per second is, the lowest speed on fiber. And I'm like, okay, well, how much is whatever we got? So it's 200. So for 110, it's 2,000 megabits per second. And then if you pay, I think 175 or something like that, I'm not going to do that. You can get 5,000 megabytes per second. I'm like, holy crap. I mean, what do you need that for?
Businesses.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I can understand the 2,000, but especially considering what games are pushing these days. Plus, you have a family in the house all connected to everything, and you're trying to stream. Yeah, no, it's not going to work.
Yeah.
So.
Yep. So speaking of being online and watching and catching up on stuff and everything, have either y'all been watching anything lately?
Just She-Hulk.
besides She-Hulk.
No.
I mean, it was cool getting to see, what is it, the Wreckers?
Yeah, the Wrecking Crew.
Yeah, the Wrecking Crew. Yeah.
That got so
for all of
terribly
for all of
underplayed.
5,
Yeah, it
like
did.
for all like 5 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
And then I saw somebody was talking about, they're like, hey, they've introduced Luke Cage's Asgardian crowbar. And I was like, okay. I I don't know shit about any of this that's going on. It just, I don't know, man. I'm just kind of bored. And the thing that really stuck with me in that, from that episode 3, was like they got diplomatic immunity completely wrong.
Yes.
Whenever they were talking about that, and they're like, yeah, diplomatic immunity. Oh, well, we're not in New Asgard. I'm like, yeah, that's the point. They're not in New Asgard. So if the United States recognizes New Asgard as a country, and this particular person which they didn't establish that this person was a diplomat from New Asgard, so I don't know why that would have even been brought up to begin with. But assuming that this random shape-changing elf person is a diplomat of New Asgard, then yes, they would absolutely fall under diplomatic immunity so long as the United States recognizes them. So what the hell are y'all talking about? Like,
What they did was they
there's
watched Lethal Weapon 2, you know.
I know, that's what I told her. That's what I told her. I turned to the wife, I was like, the second they started talking about diplomatic immunity, in the back of my head, I'm like, wait, that doesn't sound right. And I started saying, I was like, that doesn't sound right. Have none of these people watched Lethal Weapon? Like, you don't even need to have like a deep understanding of, law and all that stuff. Just go watch Lethal Weapon. It's a hell of a lot more fun and
Yes.
way more entertaining than this garbage. But yeah, man, I don't know. I've given this thing a fair shot. I didn't tear it apart for all the, dumb shit that they did in the first episode. But these last 2 episodes have just been boring.
Well, it makes
Oh my God.
makes the characters, like, it really downplays everything. Like, Wong being there, and like he was the reason why Abomination got loose and all this stuff. And it wasn't really that he got loose; he was testing him out to possibly be a guardian or for Earth.
But the problem is that there's never stakes at all for very long. It's
No.
like, Abomination got seen on the news, and then 2 seconds later, Wong walks in. He's like, "Oh, that was my fault. My bad." It was like there was no real work that needed to be done, no real, investigation that needed to happen. It was just instantaneously, we got our solution and we're done. I'm like, oh, okay. And then the rest of the episode was just them slowly getting to the point where they're going to show how they get that, oh no, is Wong going to show up? I don't know. And then whenever Abomination transformed and everybody was losing their mind, I'm like, he's clearly not trying to break out of the cage. There's been more horrifying stuff that has already appeared in this world, so I'm not quite sure why everyone's losing. I don't know, man. There's a lot to it that just feels lazy. I don't know.
Right.
It's like,
I mean, they could have watched like an episode of Law and Order, or maybe a season to understand like how a procedural would work. There's none of that. It's like,
yeah, it feels like it's trying to do that kind of.
Here's the thing to foil the plot element. Here's She-Hulk trying to figure out how this is going to work, and things just kind of like ex machina show up and allow her to be able to pull off whatever she pulls off. And in most of the episode was like the dickhead lawyer being prosecuted because he dated Megan Thee Stallion. I mean, come on, this is dumb. All this episode was to make fun of this dude. The only progressive we got was like, sorry, go ahead.
And I feel like if they hadn't have had that B plot going, right, and they had just focused more on like Abomination and all that, you could have done something more interesting with it. Like, don't just immediately bring Wong into the episode. Have She-Hulk like go find out about this underground, gladiatorial arena, like go there, and then, while doing that, find out it's Wong. But because you had this secondary plot that they also wanted to throw in this episode, they couldn't spend that time going and doing that and doing something interesting. They just had to immediately say, oh, hey, it's Wong. And then, oh, hey, he just needs to show up at this hearing, and then Abomination's fine. It's like nothing has a second to really develop into anything interesting. It's just like, oh, hey, here's a foil, here's a solution. Like with the dickhead lawyer guy, right? It's like, how are we going to get out of this? Oh wait, that's right. He's a clueless dickhead, and everyone knows it. So just have someone get up on the stand and talk about that, and we're done. Off we go.
I don't know how you can tell a story when your episodes are only 22 or 23, maybe 24 minutes long.
You can't have two stories.
There's
you
not
need
enough
one.
time. Not enough time to tell.
Not,
one.
not unless you have a 22 episode run like
Correct.
normal. And this one's going to be what, 9 maybe,
8 or 9, yeah.
It's a series trying to be a sitcom with connecting plots that don't thread well. You know,
because they don't have the time.
Correct.
They don't have the time to flesh it out. Like the Wrecking Crew, that they could have done so much more with that.
That was so good.
The weapons themselves look fantastic. Okay, the actors really didn't get a chance to see who these guys were.
Yeah,
like okay, this might be something.
Yeah, they show up, they get their ass kicked, and away they go. And then somehow they know that there's something special about her blood.
That someone else knows there's something special about her blood, and that's why they sent her to go do this. I mean, are we going to introduce the leader? I mean, I know that Red Hulk's supposed to be the big bad in this. So what? Thunderbolt Ross is a.
I mean, I'm thinking Valentina. You know, because they are doing the Thunderbolts together.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they want to know what's different about She-Hulk from Hulk, and then that's how they tie it into Red Hulk.
Yeah, but there's not enough plot threads to do it.
Exactly. That's the problem. There's no time to flesh this out. You know, I really wanted to see the Wrecking Crew. And if you look at their weapons, it reflects their costumes in the comics.
Mm-hmm.
They were just normal guys, but their weapons glowed the colors of what their costumes would have been. And I'm like, that's a cool approach to it.
But are they like, is the Wrecking
Crew Asgardian weaponry? And they're like, yeah, you know.
Yeah, that was the other thing. It's like, are they supposed to be competent bad guys? Because they come off as complete jobbers,
complete idiots.
Yeah, buffoons.
They're just jobbers that got annihilated, and that's it. Like that was all they were in that show. It's just, hey, here's some guys that took some stuff from an Asgardian construction site. Okay, why should I care? Do Asgardian tools hit harder? Is there something special about them? Because if there is, they didn't show it. They just glow. Oh, okay, cool. They've got lightsaber tools. And great.
What kind of construction site uses a big ball mace? I gotta know that.
Yeah.
What do you hammer with that?
Well, an Asgardian one. That's your answer. Yeah. Asgardians don't know about hammers. They know about maces. They mace everything into place.
They do know about hammers. There's Mjolnir. They know what a hammer is.
It is, yes.
What do you do with this
no.
ball mace?
No, but Colin, no. Hammers are used for fighting. Maces are used for masonry. That's why they're called maces.
Okay, I guess I can move. You know what? Moving on. Keep moving.
Okay, so let me add this real quick. So, but the thing is that we're dealing with characters that when they first showed up to rob her or whatever to try to get her blood, they're like, they piss her off enough before the guy could grab her and do this. And he expected that he's going to be able to do it while she's the Hulk, right? So you've seen the Hulk. He can take any kind of ballistic that you put at him. So what's going to make She-Hulk any different? I mean, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, the whole thing, again, if those are guys are supposed to at some point, at some way down the road, be some kind of credible threat, they've already been shown to be
idiots. Yes,
the biggest lunkheads ever, and it doesn't make. Again, so many things in the show just either don't make sense or are so poorly put together that, like, I don't care that she was twerking in the after credits thing. That doesn't matter, because by the time we get to that point, I'm already checked out.
Yeah.
I'm already checked out because there's nothing interesting. The hints that we could get of something interesting, and then they don't do anything with it. And they just answer their problem the second it comes up, and then move on down the line.
Here's the problem, though. Who is their audience? That's the problem. You literally have Megan Thee Stallion come in, which is no problem. But the problem is that they sit there and, like, at the credit scene, they're twerking and dancing, and she goes, "I'll literally kill for you." let's just have you be my attorney. Like Megan's the one who's smart on this. Who's this person? I mean, She-Hulk is this lawyer who's been training for years and has a degree in this.
Because it's a joke and it's funny and everyone's like, look, and that's fine, right? You're joking, you're having a good time. It's a lot, it's laughs and all that good stuff. Sure, but it's like that kind of thing felt like a blooper reel moment of something, right? Not like something that should have actually been technically canon to the show.
It doesn't work if like your two other post-credit scenes for the other stuff was not as comedic.
Goofy.
Yeah. But like I said, who's the audience? Of course, you're not getting in the comic book audience. You're getting in, I don't know. I mean,
normies. You're getting in the normies.
Yes.
And I'm a normie. Like, I don't know anything about these characters, right? And I grew up watching, like Murder, She Wrote, Matlock, and all these other kind of murder mystery / courtroom drama type stuff. Like, I've got, where is it? Oh, shit, it's down over there. I've got like the entire collection of Columbo sitting up here, which is some good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, but this show just, again, it's like it wants to be a superhero show, a family drama, a court drama. It's a comedy. It's trying to do all these different things all at the same time. And it's like, look, you can do all those different things, but you need to take your episode and focus on it. And again, like what we were saying, if you've only got 22 minutes in your episode, don't have a big B plot. Have everything focus on your main plot. If you have to have a B plot, make it something really small and simple. Don't make it another court case, right? Like just her having to deal with the paparazzi and that side of it could have just been in your B plot, right? That side, that's your B plot. Hey, how am I going to deal with, my the way I'm seen on social media? How am I going to deal with all these people coming up with all these crazy statements and things about me? And then your A plot is her actually dealing with the court case with Abomination and trying to get him paroled and all that stuff of it. But because you had that A plot, then you had the B plot with the decade lawyer, and then you have this little bitty C plot with the social media stuff. None of it gets the chance to breathe and feel like what I keep coming back to. Nothing feels really earned in anything. It's just.
And then the Easter egg is like the actual plot. Here, like the Easter egg was the plot. This is the through point that which was the wrecking crew showing up to try to get her blood. It all happened to what? All of maybe like 2 minutes, maybe.
Yeah, I completely forgot about that one. Then you have a D plot.
Yeah.
I just I don't know. I might tune in whenever they finally introduce Daredevil just to see how he comes across in this series, but I don't know that I'm gonna watch much more of that.
So here's my thing about this. I was talking with Dad. It's like he's worried about how Daredevil's going to be introduced because how everyone else is being like not introduced or aren't even given the love that they deserve as characters.
They're idiots. Everyone in this show are idiots.
The only person that was good in the show that has been, and he left the first episode, was the Hulk, Banner.
No. He left in the second episode.
Okay, well, true, but still, you got to see how great of a character is to She-Hulk, and it's like he was the best performance that we've seen out of this whole show.
Yeah, and it was funny because like thinking back to the first episode, the reason why I didn't come out of it thinking it was as big of a giant pile of garbage as it seemed like everyone else thought was because of that. It was like, oh yeah, I like Bruce and him having like all these little hints of Tony everywhere and him like mourning his friend and missing his friend and him just being him. I was like, yeah, okay, yeah, I like this character. But then when I think about it and I start thinking about the She-Hulk parts, I don't like it, which is funny because that kind of plays into so I've watched both of the Rings of Power episodes now, and it's kind of the same thing in that. Like I went in, I watched the 2 episodes, I came out of them, and I was like, this show isn't as big of a dumpster fire as it seems like a lot of people are calling it to me. But the more I think about it, the parts with Galadriel are the parts that don't sit right with me. There are things that she does that don't make sense. There are plot devices that are put in that when you think them through don't make sense, because it's like, oh, if this character thought that this thing was going on, then why did he send her off to this other thing, right? Like if this is going on and they know that this is going on, then why are they directly telling her that it's not, just to set up something else? Like, that character wouldn't do that. This character wouldn't do that. Like, there's so many little things in that show specifically with her character, and like, I don't care that she's this, warrior badass in this show. That's fine, whatever. But it really, like, I did the math. In the show, she should be about at minimum 1,000 years old. Elrond should be about half that. But Elrond in this show acts more mature than Galadriel does. And it's like, that should be swapped. The hot-headed, running on emotion character should be Elrond.
Yeah, because he's a younger elf.
And the, mature, level-headed, I've got this under control and I'm a badass, should be Galadriel. But it's like they've changed those at this point. And so it's, I don't know. Again, it's not terrible. Like, the best thing about the show so far was the second episode and the dwarves. The dwarves are spot on. I love the dwarves in this. They're great. The Southmen, or whatever the hell they're called, are all kind of stupid in their own right, but it's not anything terrible. The totally not hobbits they're fine. They're very meh. The most interesting thing about their story is the wizard, who the first episode is like, ooh, could this be Sauron? Like, look at what the crater looks like. It kind of looks like the eye. And it's like, no, guys, it's at minimum a wizard, probably Gandalf, because of certain things that happen. It's like, oh yeah, I remember when Gandalf did this. Like, I remember when Gandalf did this. Y'all are either telegraphing this really hard to pull the rug out from everyone with a really dumb twist, or you're just putting it really on the nose, and I don't know which it is. I hope they don't try and sell him off as Sauron, because if it turns out that the guy who fell from the sky is Sauron, then this show is, then I will go back and retroactively say this show is awful. Right now, it's fine. I just want to excise Galadriel's parts out of it, because what they have her do and how they have her act is just terrible.
So the biggest thing is like, I still haven't watched it yet. I don't know how I feel about watching it, because I mean, people are just, I don't know, because when I heard that they weren't kind of following lore with like what the Silmarillion, I was like, I don't know if I want to watch this. This is like,
they don't have rights to the Silmarillion. They don't have rights to the Silmarillion. They don't have rights to the trilogy. They don't have rights to the Hobbit. They have rights to the appendices.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Oh,
no,
wow.
that's all they have the rights to. And that's why what they're telling a story in the Second Age, which is the one age that Tolkien wrote almost nothing about.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why there's all these like Amazon created characters, right? Like, basically the entire cast outside of the main elves are all original creations. Every single one of them. The dwarf, like, other than like the extremely important like royalty class characters that are everywhere, everyone else is original creation, because they don't have the rights to explicitly tell these stories. So instead, they got to fit their show into this narrow window of, we don't really know what happened. There's like general statements made here and there about stuff that occurred, and then they're just kind of filling in the gaps everywhere else. But what they're filling in the gaps with doesn't make sense with the characters that we know from before and the characters that we know that they are after.
Yeah.
Right. And that's my problem with Galadriel. This version of Galadriel doesn't make sense, because at this point in history, She should be married. She should have a kid. Her and her husband should have like already been establishing a kingdom and all this stuff. It's like, okay, if you don't want to tell that story and you want to tell a story about her running around Middle Earth hunting orcs or whatever, okay, fine, whatever. I don't care. You can, I guess you can do that, but you only have a finite window for her to do that. But she should at least show signs of who she becomes, and so far, she doesn't.
Well, and it seems also like from what you're telling me that they don't understand how, like, what we've established as how elves should act, or
It's Galadriel. It's literally just
just
Galadriel.
Galadriel. Okay.
All the other elves act like the dialogue's terrible. Like the dialogue in a lot of cases feels very forced and terrible, but they at least act like very long-lived creatures who have been around for centuries, right? And they behave thus. Galadriel is the only one who is no, no. Y'all need to listen to me. I'm blah blah blah. I've heard people say that she comes off very much like a Karen.
Yeah.
And she kind of does. She kind of does. Right? Like she's not full take me to your manager, but she's at least raising a stink in the store, right?
Well, but she's raised to be an elf. She's been around elves for what, 1,000 years, like you said. So how do you like get to a point where you're just like, I'm fed up with this for this one era of Tolkien? I'm gonna do whatever the hell I want just to appease who? And then I'm gonna go back to how I'm supposed to be for everything else in my lore and history.
Well, I'm sure that the writers in their mind said, "Hey, wouldn't it be really cool to see a different version of the elves and the things that they go through to turn them into who they are?" Okay, that's fine. That's fair. That's where, like I said, if they swapped Galadriel and Elrond's place in this show, it would come off much more believable because, again, Galadriel's twice as old as Elrond. So she should not be governed by her emotions. Granted, like her brother died in the war against Morgoth. Like she's lost family, like all this stuff. So she's carrying a lot of emotion in her. It's like, okay, but again, she's 1,000 years old. You're telling me that in 1,000 years she isn't mature enough to be able to handle that, to be able to process and understand, hey, me flying off on the seat of my pants isn't going to get the job done. We need to plan this out. This needs to be something that that we take our time with, that we understand what we're dealing with and all this other stuff. It's just she just runs into it. Whereas with Elrond, it's like, okay, Elrond's only been around for 500 years, and 200 of that they've been hunting Sauron or whatever is going on. Mm-hmm. It's like I can see him still being somewhat impulsive in his actions, and then you could have Galadriel be the voice of reason, right? Teaching Elrond and growing him into the elder statesman that he eventually becomes by the time we find him in The Hobbit. It's like that would make sense, but that's not what they're doing. They've got it flipped. Elrond's more the elder statesman, and Galadriel is the emotional one, and it's odd.
It's off-putting, yeah.
Yeah, and again, some of her decisions and some of the things that they decide to put, like the situations that they decide to put her in, don't make sense other than the writers have to get her over here. And so in order to get her over here, we got to do some dumb shit over here that doesn't make sense in the overall scheme of everyone. But we're going to do it because we need her to go over there and meet this person. It's like, but how you set it up doesn't make sense. Like, why would they do that? Why would she do that? And how did they survive that? Because that's a little impossible, but whatever. It's fantasy.
Do you get the feeling that it's like, what humans would think elves would do versus like what, elves would do?
So this is a common, it's really comes down to a common problem I find with a lot of people's storytelling when it comes to ancient creatures, right? Ancient beings. It's one of the reasons why it frustrates me with a lot of vampire stories where this vampire's like 1,000 years old, but he's still chasing after chicks in their 20s and getting into like teenage drama bullshit. The only show that I've ever seen that kind of got it right was True Blood with Godric. Godric in the show, I don't know how he is in the books. I've only ever seen the show, but Godric in the show had this kind of like above it all almost sense, right? Like he didn't really get into the human affairs. He just kind of stayed off on his own. He felt like he was older and was above all of the stuff that was going on. And then he eventually walks himself into the sun because he's tired of being alive for so long. But that's what it feels like. It feels like these people are putting their own idea of a character here. And it's not like what humans would see as elves. It's like, I have a personality type that I think she should be because I want to tell this specific story, instead of thinking, here's the character, here's how she would behave at this point in her life, right? They have no respect, I feel like, for the character itself. They just say, well, yeah, she's 1,000 years old. Yeah, she's probably seen her own fair share of stuff. Yeah, she should have gone through all these other things, and it should have helped to harden her and mature and make her closer to what we see later on. But I think it would be cooler to tell a story of like angsty teenager Galadriel, and that's what we're going to do. It's like, but that's not who she is. That's not who she should be at this point. And that's what it feels like. It's like what we talked about before. It's like these people have an idea for a fantasy story that they want to tell, but no one would give a shit about it. So they tack Lord of the Rings onto it, put in a bunch of names for the people in it, and then go film it, spending $1 billion to do it. So, but like I said, the majority of the show is fine. It's entertaining enough. The dwarves, like I said, are probably the best part. The wizard's pretty interesting. It's just, man, they have done Galadriel wrong, and it makes me sad because the actress looks very much the part. She's not terrible. I really think a lot of the problem with her is the writing that the writing that they've given her to work with is just it just doesn't fit. And that's the one part of it that I can't get my head around. So she's the pivotal character of all of this. So we'll see how long this goes and if they can eventually right the ship on it. But considering how dug in the character is into what she is so far in this series, I don't know, man.
Well, the biggest problem is that you think about how for if this show doesn't succeed, they'll never get to that point, because there's a lot of people that are upset about how the characters are portrayed. There's other people complaining for other reasons, but for if you guys know anything about us, we complain about because we enjoy storytelling. And if it's not believable, it throws us out of it. And that's what we were raised on, was storytelling. And there was some great stuff growing up. And there still is some things that are really good. But when it doesn't fit the established universe that it's set in, and it isn't faithful to what was established before, it doesn't feel genuine. It doesn't feel right. It feels forced. And it breaks us out of the immersion of what we're watching or reading or playing. So I just don't know. I want to watch it, but I don't know. I don't want to give them a view if the show is garbage. I mean, I want to, I'm the type of person, I'm going to speak with my wallet. If I don't feel comfortable with something because it doesn't fit, I'm not going to,
I'm really curious to see what the viewership, how the viewership progresses, right? Because I know a lot of people have been complaining about it. A lot of people have been complaining about it for various reasons. Some people hate everything about it because apparently there's a lot of stuff in it that kind of breaks the lore quite a bit. Like Galadriel not being married, not having a daughter, all that stuff at this point in her life. It kind of changes the calculus of later stuff, because what her daughter marries Elrond, and that's where Arwen comes from, if I remember right, or something like that. So like if Arwen doesn't exist, that's kind of a big deal. Later on, kind of right for her to exist at some point. But yeah, it just, like I said, I don't have a problem with, I wouldn't have a problem with showing Galadriel as being this awesome fighter, right? As this, because clearly all the elves know how to fight. They've all gone into battle. They've all done these things, but it's just, and yeah, she could have emotional moments, right? She could definitely react to like the death of her brother and struggling with wanting to go get revenge, but I would expect her to be, again, with how old she is as compared to other characters, I would expect her to behave older in these cases, right? And it's not about the whole, well, women can't be emotional about stuff. It's no, it's she's twice as old as almost every other elf that's around her, but she acts a quarter of all their ages, and it just doesn't make sense in context of the character.
There's definitely a reason for that. I mean, you think about the fact that like, or what your argument is, you know, being very emotional is something you would associate with someone who's younger. As someone who's older, they've learned to accept certain things. They learn to, not get so heated about stuff. And
Or at the very least, not be heated all the time. Again,
correct.
Outburst or something, right, coming out because of specific stimuli, but constantly letting your emotions rule you all the time, it's actually almost offensive for her to be that way, right? It's almost like, oh, so the female is the one who's the super emotional all the time, only governed by her emotions, lashes out, acts all crazy, right? Like she's the one who does that. It's like, yeah.
Yeah,
So
we get stereotyping.
Where have
It's
we
funny
heard
to
that
see.
recently? In
Right.
what other show?
Yeah.
Hmm.
She-Hulk did it.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's the funny thing. It's like, okay, if you don't want, if that's not who these characters are supposed to be, then why are you showing her this way? And is it because, oh well, we want to catch all the people that are going to be called out as misogynistic or whatever, because, well, women should be able to have emotions too? Again, yeah, absolutely. And if this was a much younger version of Galadriel, and she was riding her, the death of her brother had just happened, and she was just 100% devoted to the warpath, it's like, I understand that. But in this show, they've supposedly been hunting Sauron for centuries, hundreds of years. You're telling me that in hundreds of years, she is still as raw and as emotional as the day that her brother died? That doesn't make sense. That doesn't jive. And I get it, elves, they live for thousands of years and all that stuff, but they still process, like, as far as we know, they still process things the same, right? They still have that sense of time, and you would think that them being, especially her, from being from the Undying Lands and all that stuff, that there would be a quicker sense to mature and focus and become disciplined and understand, because like the way that she treats the other elves at some points, it's like, how are you in charge of anyone? How did anyone give you people for you to be in charge of when you clearly don't give a shit about any of them?
Mm-hmm.
And all you care about is your mission, right? At that point, you should be stripped of your command. You should be, cast down. But the whole time, everybody's like, "Oh, but you're so great. You're awesome. You did so good. You're fantastic. And because of that, we're going to give you this thing." It's like, but it doesn't make sense. I don't know. I'm gonna power through. Like every show, I try to give like three. I try to give it about 3 episodes to see if it finally hits its stride. I just think it's crazy that 2 hours into this show, and people pointed out, like, 2 hours into the Lord of the Rings movies, you had already established the hobbits, Gandalf, Aragorn. They were already fighting the Nazgul on top of the little plateau,
little rock platform. Yeah.
You'd gotten all the way to there. You'd already established the One Ring, its powers, all this stuff, and this show just meanders through shit and just wastes so much time on all this crap, and it's just not a lot of it is really servicing the story well. There's these I don't know. It's
So
again, I don't. It's not a dumpster fire. I don't have this raging venom for it yet, but they need to tighten the ship,
Mhm.
right? They need to tighten this thing up so that it can end strong. Because if it keeps on going this way, it's going to remind me of the Hobbit movies, where I'm like, why the hell are we back to this dumbass love triangle again? I
that
don't
didn't
care.
exist in the book at all. But yeah, I
Yeah,
know.
I don't care.
Yeah.
Get to Smaug. Get to the Battle of the Five Armies. Get to the interesting stuff. Why are we wasting our time watching this elf and this dwarf and Legolas have a weird romantic bullshit going? It does. It's stupid and a waste of time and filler. Pointless filler.
Yeah. So on a good note, I picked up Loop I picked up Lupin the Third versus Case Closed for
yeah?
Anna. We watched that. That was fantastic, man. It took me right back to watching both those shows. It's a really good case. You know, there's a murder in a kingdom. You know, a prince and the queen is murdered. So the daughter, the princess, ends up becoming the new queen, and there's an attempt on her life, and she ends up going to Japan, and that's where Richard and Rachel and Conan are. They're at the banquet and everything, and he notices some stuff where they try to poison her. And it's just like you just start seeing like Lupin show up, and you see Goemon show up, and all these other characters from Lupin, and you see all the characters from Case Closed. It was just fantastic. It was well done, and I highly recommend it. Music was great, animation was great. It's amazing how that animation worked well together. Both those animation styles work well together in one film. And they got the voice actors to come back for all of Lupin's cast, but who we've come to know from all the other movies and everything. But they couldn't get the original actors to come back to do the voices for Case Closed. Yeah.
Well, as long as they're not too different, right? As long as they're in the ballpark, then
they're pretty close. Yeah, pretty close. But it's great. Yeah, and it's really cool watching them work together at the end. So,
Was that on Blu-ray or DVD or?
I got it on Blu-ray, no digital copy, unfortunately, because I want to put that on so you guys could check it out. But it was definitely, if you can get a hold of it, it's really good.
All right.
Lupin's definitely one of those shows that I keep meaning to go back and watch more of.
Mm-hmm.
Just what, 6 series, right, of it?
Yeah,
and
I think so. Bunch of movies, yeah.
Tons of movies. Holy crap. Now, everybody's seen Castle of Cagliostro, right? It's classic. I have the woman called Fujiko Mine, right?
Yeah.
Which is the 4th series, which is completely different from the rest of everything. And then I have part 5, which is the Italian deal.
Yep.
And I just need to sit down and watch both of those. I've seen the movies that are based in the Fujiko universe, like what was it, Jigen's Gravestone, Goemon's Bloody Spray, and then I haven't seen the third one yet, which is Fujiko's Lie. But of those, the Jigen one's kind of weird, but the Goemon one is great. Dude, Goemon's Bloody Spray is such a good movie. That was so much fun. And then like how he beats the crazy hand axe wielding nut job at the end is so good.
Yeah, it was funny because I was sitting there going, all right, so where's Goemon? I mean, I see Jigen, I see Fujiko. Come on, where's he at? And then like Lupin gets stuck in a situation, and he comes to save him.
Yeah, but I need to go back and watch that. I think a lot of them are on Crunchyroll, and so I need to go back and just try and watch, because that's one series that I never really I knew about it, right? Like I saw stuff on it. I just never sat down and watched it, right? It was never on anything. Like it never came on Cartoon Network that I'm aware of. It was never on like Adult Swim or anything. So the main avenue that I had to watch anime, it was just never there. So now that it's finally broken out, now there's just so much shit to watch. I just got to make time for it, right?
Oh yeah, yeah, exactly. You just gotta. It's like I find myself, I'm sitting there playing on my phone or doing something, and it's like I could, or watching YouTube. It's like, damn it, I could be watching other stuff. Not like saying like, because it's not like me watching my friends. They usually watch them all when I'm at work and stuff, and I need something on in the background. But it's like there'll be like stuff about fishing or whatever or camping. It's like, oh, this sounds interesting. I'm gonna go watch this. And then it's like, but I could have watched this anime or this movie here.
I mean, when I'm home is really the big thing, right? But I a lot of these shows, it's like I need to focus on it.
Mhm.
So like I keep meaning to go back and rewatch all of, or at least as much as I can of Gundam, right? The Universal Saga, because it's like I've seen Gundam Wing, right? I grew up watching Wing, and I've watched the movies of Gundam, the original one, which
Mhm.
condenses
Yeah, it's 3
all
movies.
the original series way down. And the movies are pretty interesting. I've watched 08 The Mess Team. I've watched 008.
Stardust
Is it
Memory. Yeah, it's
the one with the nuclear powered Gundam
Yeah.
or whatever?
it's the Stardust Memory.
So I've seen that one. But I
You
want to
got-
go back and watch all of the original series. Then I need to make my way through Zeta, and then
And Double Zeta.
I don't have Double Zeta, but I've always heard Double Zeta is kind of awful.
It's I mean it's you need to watch it for some of the stuff, for some of the plot elements and Char's
Unicorn?
counterattack.
Oh.
And some of it's I think referenced in Unicorn as well. But
See, and that's is that now that they've done all the Char's counterattack, and then they've done all the origin stuff with like the early years of Char. It's like, okay, shit. Now I need to go back and rewatch. And now I need to go watch the Char origin movies, and
They're
then
great.
Gundam,
Mhm.
and then Zeta, and then Double Zeta, and then
remember
Unicorn.
Wing is not part of Gundam of the
No, I
Universal
know. It's
Century.
not. It's
Yeah.
not. It's like Iron Blooded Orphans,
Yeah.
G Gundam. All those aren't a part of. That's why I said the Universal timeline, right?
Yeah.
Go
So
watch.
you got Unicorn, you got
Oh, MS
War-
team.
War in the Pocket.
Don't know about that one, but
So this one takes place during the 1 year war, like during the same time that Armoros and stuff. So in that one, the Federation is making a new Gundam for Armoro, and it's called the Alex. And it's actually the prototype was what would have been used for the new Gundam, but of course it gets destroyed. But it's basically about a Xeon strike team that go to a side to take a hit and possibly steal a new Gundam from the Federation, and the whole team dies except for one of the guys, and he ends up befriending a kid on the side. It's really good. It's got David Hayter doing the voice of the main character.
okay, but this doesn't star Amuro. It's somebody completely different. It's
Someone completely different. This is kind of like how MSA Team and Stardust Memory are kind of like different things going on within the 1 year war plus the years afterwards.
I didn't even know about that one.
And there's another movie which is F-91, which was supposed to be the next series after Mobile Suit Gundam, but because there was some funding issues or something, I can't remember what all the stuff was. It ended up just getting truncated into a movie instead of a series. And they tried to Tomino
suit though.
Tomino was trying to do. He just tried to do what he could, making that into a movie, and I wish it was a series. It was great. I liked the direction. It takes place like I think like 50 years after the original Mobile Suit Gundam. It's like quite a few. It's even after Unicorn.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. Man, there's just way too much Gundam out there to watch. Because you're not even getting into Seed or you're not getting into Seed. I haven't seen Iron Blooded Orphans. I saw like the first 2 episodes, but I've never gone back and rewatched all that. I watched G Gundam back in the day, but I haven't gone back to that one. You try to rewatch Wing these days, and man, those Relina episodes
they're awful. I mean, I got him right here, and then let me get because I'm actually going to put up another shelf so I can actually put all the winged ones together.
There you go.
But
Troa was my boy in that show, man. Troa was so awesome. Lost his memory. Didn't matter. Got out in God, what were the space units? Because Taurus was the land units.
Well, there was the
Was it
Leos too.
Huh?
There was the Leos, which were the standard suits for the same federation that Zex Marquis was part of. I can't remember. It's
Oh
been so
no,
long
I'm
since-
Taurus. So yeah, got out in a friggin' regular Taurus unit and went out and fought the blue one that had the giant beam cannon and the red one that had the force shield projectors. Shit, the Mercurius and the oh god. Anyways,
Yeah, it's been a
yeah,
while.
fought them in just a Virgo and held him to a standstill without his memory, just off of just sheer muscle. Troll was a badass in that show. God, I loved him.
Yeah, and Jeff's favorite was Zex Marquis. Not Zex, but I'm sorry. Damn it. Duo with his death scythe and everything. Yeah.
My brother's favorite was Duo, right? Most people tended to like Duo, but yeah, just from the second I saw on Adult Swim the giant chain gun and all the missile pods, I'm like, I don't know what that is, but that looks badass.
Yeah.
So the second it came out, I was like, all right, heavy arms, and then Troa. I was like, all right, I'm down with this.
Yes.
I'm perfectly fine with this character in this Gundam. That's fantastic.
So what's funny is like, so Seed is basically kind of a retelling of the original Mobile Suit Gundam. Seed Destiny was the second series, and then they got a movie, and that was really good. I really loved the first series of Seed. Destiny was okay, but it still was cool to get to see the characters kind of like move on and grow a little bit. Double O Gundam is kind of a retelling of Wing, because you have the Gundam Meisters versus what the Gundam Wing guys were called. I can't remember what they're called now. Operation.
Oh, I mean, it was Operation Meteor, but I don't know if they had a specific
organization name. Yeah,
because they weren't new types, right?
No.
New types didn't exist in Wing.
Nope.
There was no like, specialty thing to them. They were just trained kid fighters, right? They were just children soldiers that were awesome at what they did.
Yeah, because in Seed they're called coordinators, and what they were genetically modified humans that ended up living out in space, and regular humans were afraid of them or fought them and all this other stuff.
Gotta love big old stompy robots.
Hell yeah, man.
Words. I'm saying words.
Yeah. Sorry, Colin.
Have you been watching anything recently? Have you had anything interesting going on, Colin? Any random tangents you want to go into?
No.
What are
in order to avoid being
stompy
fined
robots?
$1,000 a day, town, I have to work on my yard. Because we have this beautification project, and that's a whole different thing. So I've watched nothing. I have not worked on my own podcast. I've got nothing done. I get the last 4 weeks of school coming. In 2 weeks, I start teaching lessons for guitar, and I got nothing ready.
Oh, jeez.
Awesome.
That does sound like fun.
Words.
They exist.
Well, that's what I was saying. So Colin, what are your feelings on giant stompy robots?
I love giant stomping robots, especially if they're stomping on giant kaiju.
Mm-hmm.
This is also true.
Yeah, very much, 100%.
I know some Gundam, but no, right now I'm just sitting back and letting you guys talk because that's clearly your jam.
Oh yeah,
you lost me way back.
Again, it was Toonami, right? Toonami is the biggest influence on so much of my Japanese cartoon watching, right? So like that's where Macross, I don't know anything about. Whatever that Robotech, right? Which is the Macross that isn't Macross stuff. I don't know anything about that. I watched one trailer and I saw the weird way that the robot's looking at, where it's just like a plane with legs and arms and stuff. I'm like, what the hell is this? But it's because, my main point of reference for giant robots is Gundam. So I'm used to seeing giant robots as people or Transformers, right? Gundam and Transformers. So to me, giant robots look like people. So whenever I see stuff like BattleTech or Macross or Robotech, I just look at it and I'm like, that doesn't look right. That looks like shit. Where's all the other cool stuff that goes on them?
See,
But-
the giant robots was always Shogun Warriors.
So here's the funny thing about all that, right? So Robotech is an amalgam of Macross, Southern Cross, and then Genesis Climber Masmuda.
Okay.
So that is, of course, the Southern Cross, which is all the stuff about. Okay, hold on. The Macross saga was Rick Hunter, Lisa Hayes, Roy Fokker, Claudia, Maximilian Genius, all them. Those are all Min May. Those are all characters from that. Then it had the Macross, it had the Zentradi, it had the transforming Veritex, it had the Battleroids, which were totally ripped off from BattleTech. They didn't rip it. BattleTech ripped it off from them. It wasn't the other way around.
Okay.
Southern Cross was Max and Miria's daughter, and her stories with the Robotech Masters, and they had the hover tanks that transformed into the robots, plus some other stuff. Then when it got to the next generation, which was the Genesis Climber Masmuda, was about a group of people that were on a. So actually, the Earth gets attacked by a race of aliens called the Invid, and they're looking for robo technology, or in the original anime, I can't remember what it was called. It was some kind of life force, a flower that was blooming on Earth, and that they were trying to find. And they were just basically took Earth back to like the Dark Ages almost, because there was just these small cities of pockets that were people lived, and as long as you didn't do anything against the Invid wouldn't mess with you. But there was a resistance group of people that were trying to stop the Invid, and there was a force that was being sent from Mars to Earth to try to combat the Invid, and it completely failed. So the main character, Scott Bernard, is the one who ends up joining a bunch of other people, ragtag group of people that ended up actually bringing down the Invid. But going back to Robotech is the reason with Macross. Yeah, no, I know. There's a lot of stuff. Okay. So going back to the Macross saga, the reason why they made the transforming Veritex or Valkyries, the fighter jets that transform the robots, was because there was a race of beings called Zentradi. These are giant humanoid creatures the size of these transforming mechs. So there was a reason why they designed them to be that big. Plus, they wanted to be able to have the maneuverability to fly in the sky, because at the time, we're very heavy with air combat and everything like that. So, but, of course, whatever.
I just thought of the first piece of merch for the Dad Level podcast. A big piece of plexiglass on a little stand, comes with dry erase markers, and you and David have both done it where I have seen it possible. You'll sit there and you'll start with little circle here, and then you'll draw it out in reverse so that people on the screen see you explaining the story, and then you'll have your X over here, and then you have this little dotted line, and then you'll be able to put all your little commentary and little stinky faces, little piles of poo, whatever, to help describe your story and get it across.
It works. But
especially with David, because he's very animated with his hands. And it's like watching the little bouncing ball. It's just little.
I do express with my hands.
I'm Italian. I can't help it. I got to express with my hands.
It's fine. That's what in my head. I'm seeing red, dry erase markers squiggling on the board in front of you like some kind of weird John Madden Family Guy football thing.
No, it's this. I can see it. Animated versions of me and David with a dry erase board and the lines and stuff being back in us arguing back. What's real and what's not.
Yeah. Now, if we could find the people who animated the Game Grump stuff, that'd be perfect.
So, just to add into the thing about Robotech, David. So when Harmony Gold got the rights to all those, there was quite a few things that were taken from the Macross story, like designs of mechs and everything that were utilized for the BattleTech. So they got the rights to that before Harmony Gold got the rights to it. That's why we never got really a lot of the toys that were created from the anime. Matchbox got the rights, but they could only do certain things with that. There was a whole lot of stuff that went on with Harmony Gold acquiring the rights just for the Macross saga.
Yeah, I've heard some people try and explain that whole tangled knot of a mess of rights before, and at a certain point, my eyes just gloss over, and then I snap out of it and come back and go, okay, I'm just gonna go back to Gundam, guys. Like y'all keep y'all's little weird pod looking walking tank stuff.
I'm so glad they didn't get the rights to it. So
I'm gonna go watch the really weeb shit.
So I did want to talk a little bit about. Have you guys looked into the? Was it 1D&D, the next 6th edition?
No, I haven't had
D&D
any
yet?
time to.
Well, I mean, it's not 6th edition though, right? It's just online.
It's about to be
version of
6th edition.
Yeah.
But I mean, I haven't even heard about them making any kind of changes to it. It just sounds like they're taking 5th edition, right? Like, yeah, they've made changes with like some of the most recent expansions to it, like the cauldron and all that other stuff that gets you more changes to how you can build up characters with like backgrounds and all that stuff to it. And it just seems like they're taking that and they're implementing it on a entirely digital space, which on the one hand is really cool. But I sent you a video of a guy who's called Dungeon Masterpiece, I think is what show name is, which I thought he had a really interesting breakdown and take on it, which was Dungeon Masterpiece. He had a really interesting take on it, which was that, you know, once D&D launches this service, it is going to have wide ranging, you know, effects on the overall landscape of tabletop or you know, digital tabletop RPGs, because the interface for it is going to be completely different from stuff like Roll20, right?
Yep.
And now that D&D will have that, they're probably not going to, like, depending on what Wizards does, right? Like, that's the big unknown at this point, is what is Wizards of the Coast going to do? Are they going to still allow these other companies to, you know, sell this product on their own lines? Or is it going to become entirely invested in the one D&D format, right? Because if you can't buy D&D stuff for
5th edition or anything.
Well, for anything like Roll20, or if you can't get it through Drive-Thru RPG or stuff like that, and all of it is going to be solely confined to the one D&D and I guess D&D Beyond like realm, then you're going to be removing a huge source of revenue from all these other groups. And now, kind of what he was pointing out to, right? Like these other providers of this kind of material kind of exposed people to other role-playing type of games. And if people are coming to something through D&D, but now they're not going to have this additional exposure
to other things,
to other things, then, you know, is that gonna hamper stuff like Shadowrun from taking off, right? Is it gonna cause these other lesser known properties like World of Darkness to suddenly start struggling more than they did before? I really think that's kind of the most interesting side of it. Like I'm curious to see how Wizards of the Coast develops it. Like the overall idea of it is pretty cool, right? The idea that you can essentially be creating a almost video game
virtual tabletop for you and your players.
But at the same time, again, kind of what that guy was talking to on his channel about it, whenever you are dealing with a visual representation of something, you are now you're removing some of the imagination from it. Like,
Oh
and
yeah.
that's a problem with the video games, right? And that's one of the big selling points of tabletop RPGs is when it is completely left to your imagination. Depending on your dungeon master, you can make up stuff. Like, that's one of the big things about the apocalypse world stuff, where the players are also narrators in the overall structure of what's being told. So something that wasn't there before in the mind of the dungeon master is now established through actions of the players. So now you can create things essentially out of free air, right? Whenever you're dealing with something that's totally in the player's imagination. Like, hey, are there, you know, uh, uh, are there chandeliers and things that I can swing off of and do cool stunts from? And the dungeon master might have not have thought of that. And then in the context of what's being played, they can say, "Oh yeah, those are there," and then you can play off of it. But whenever you have something that's completely formatted and showing up like just a basic, like a video game, and now those things aren't there, right? And so the players are going to focus on what they can see, like a video game. So they're going to focus on what's presented to them rather than thinking outside of that box and taking things outside of what's shown and adding them to it. Right now, they're going to confine their imagination to only what's visible in front of them. So, on the one hand, it's a really cool idea, and it will probably help a lot of people come to the uh, the hobby as a whole. But at the same time, it's gonna be very limiting, and it's going to create a type of expectation that other formats aren't going to be able to meet, right?
Mhm.
Because they're not going to have the same um, available funds and things like Wizards does to build something out like this. You're going to be stuck with something like Roll20, which is going to require a lot of investment, and it's not going to be nearly as polished as something like this is going to be.
Yeah, I mean it's very interesting. I mean, if Wizards does it right, they literally can sit there and go and hey, we're gonna. Now technically it's basically Hasbro at this point anyway. We're gonna create this universal system that anybody could come in and create their virtual tools for. That'd be great, because then it's something to compete with like Roll20, and you could have that. Because I mean, think about it. I have that G.I. Joe role playing system. I have the Terminator one coming pretty soon.
But but it's not so much, hey, you can create your own tools and use it in this.
We don't
It's
know
going
yet. Yeah,
it's going to be for D&D, right?
correct.
Like,
But
so
that's what I'm saying. If they decide that hey, this is a viable system we could utilize for other game systems, as long as maybe say one of these other companies decides to want to pay us and put into it, or it gives the asset to the players to generate their own whatever. Um, it could be some good opportunities from that. But I agree with you. I don't know how much this is going to affect because I know that I helped kickstart Roll20, back when it was on Kickstarter back in the day. So who knows? I'm looking forward to seeing what they're going to do with the changes to the system more than I am the what people utilize to play for the visual aid that people need. Because in that same token, when I played D&D and all this other stuff back in the day, we didn't have maps. It was all in the mind, and up to the
or we
D&D.
drew our own maps
Yeah,
as we went along.
Mm-hmm. So, but of course now most of the stuff is online and people are distant, so they're playing remote from wherever. So, having a visual aid does help. Because then it kind of cuts down on the whole thing of like if the DM has it, here's a camera and stuff like that. You can literally have it just in the virtual space, and that's what you record while you have other people playing and stuff. And if you're doing some kind of streaming thing or just making a video. But
yeah,
I'm curious because I just read this week that there was already a change that Wizards trying to do with Spelljammers, because with the flying race, the flying monkeys, Apparently, they were made by a wizard to be used for tools of war.
No, they were captured, right? So they were captured by a wizard and enslaved, and then like genetically modified to become
Okay,
like
okay.
soldiers, like that.
Yeah.
And so there was a bunch of people that came out and cried foul about it and claimed that it was too close to like, you know, colonizing and enslavement and all that. And so there was a cry of racism, and so they've gone back, and I haven't read how they supposedly changed
Yeah.
the origin of it, but yeah, like stuff like that is
I'm
I don't know.
surprised nobody's saying Wizard of Oz ripoff yet.
To have flying monkeys, yeah.
I mean, because everything you guys just described about them, my head's going. That sounds exactly what happened in Wizard of Oz to the flying monkeys. That's almost exactly what happened to them.
So I don't understand how like we can't make. We're getting to the point with, and I guess this goes into another topic, and we can really kind of go into this a little bit further another time. But like they came up with this fictional thing. Yes, it has ties to possible reality thing of events, but it's like that stuff's gonna happen. And it may happen on another dimension. It may happen on another planet. You can't just stop it from happening everywhere. You know, things have to change for it to progress to be changed. But it's fiction.
Yeah.
I don't.
Well, it is.
I don't understand. It's what is the lore from these things. I don't know why it's a big deal.
You're right. What you know, reality. Guess what?
I mean, what we're not going to have. What next Fallout? We're not going to have slavers anymore. What are we going to? And they're a big part of the game. I mean, it's like, oh, you know,
I mean, I think in that case,
Yeah.
right, it's about presentation.
Definitely a rabbit hole.
It's about presentation on the one side of it, right? Like the fact that you had this enslaved race that was being utilized this way and they were monkeys, I think is the one side that a lot of people kind of pointed to, which but at the same time, it's like I think people read too far into stuff, right? And that's the problem is like just because this was created and it kind of, you know, it if you look hard enough, you can find racial undertones in almost anything, right?
Mhm.
You can find it in a lot of places. If you just stare at something hard enough, you can see some part of it that, well, you know, that kind of sounds like you're talking about these people or those people. That's why you have so many disclaimers in front of games and things that, you know, representations of peoples and places are completely by accident, yada yada yada, right? To absolve them of those types of cases. And it's I don't know, man. It stuff like that just seems like again people are looking too hard at something and they're reading too much into it than what's actually intended to be there. It's like no one. I don't think that Wizards of the Coast actually went out of their way to say like, "Hey, everybody,
yeah,
check this.
exactly.
We've got space monkeys that are clearly analogous to real world events." It's like no, it was just someone thought of like what Colin said, the Wizard of Oz. Oh yeah, the Wizard of Oz, flying monkeys. Well, clearly the Wicked Witch of the West just captured them and was utilizing them for her own means. I mean that the Wicked Witch of the West. I don't think many people are going to point to her as some bastion of a type of person that we should all be striving to become. It's like yeah, she's clearly evil and a horrible person, and so anything she does should not be, mimicked or praised or anything like that.
Yeah.
So
I mean, she's evil. I mean, yeah, we don't condone evil. We want an evil so that way the heroes that we want to defeat the evil have a reason to fight the evil. We don't.
Yeah.
We got to this point where we're changing the backstories for these villains to make them more relatable. Why they go to this stuff? It's like you don't have to.
They're bad guys.
They're just bad guys.
Yeah.
Throughout history, we have bad people. Who cares about how they became bad?
And where you have interesting stories to tell, right, is where you do have these groups that are traditionally shown as evil or at the very least not classically good in that sense. And that's where you have characters like Dritz that comes out, right? Like the Drow in D&D are just evil elves, right? They're horrific. So the fact that Dritz comes out and is a complete, is a good guy, is a hero, and does all these things, it's it makes him a more interesting character because of the background that he comes from. Now you can tell an interesting story from the perspective of a group, and that's where the cool thing about tabletop RPGs comes from is, you can have characters with backgrounds and things, but at the same time, so much of these rule books are, hey, here's a go by, here's a basis to start from, but you don't have to tell a story where the drow are evil. You can decide to set your game in a world where this group of drow are all good, are completely good, don't believe in any of the things any of the drow in the book as described is. It all just boils down to your dungeon master and the type of story they want to tell. And there's been a lot of people that have come out with things where, like, what is it called, the X card or whatever, where people are starting to feel a little, uneasy about a topic that's come up. They can throw it out, people at the table or whatever can have a discussion. And if you're friends, right, if most people who get into this kind of stuff, if they aren't friends to start with, eventually develop friendships. And once you get used to each other, you can understand your limits of storytelling when it comes to the people that you're around. And you can work within those limits to still tell interesting stories. And that's what it comes down to. It's like you need to understand the audience that you're working with. And if you're going at a broad audience, then people need to understand that a broader audience isn't going to necessarily play into certain things that bother you as a person. So you need to understand that either you're willing to accept that some portion of this story bothers you, but the overall story you're mostly interested in, and just, avoid the parts that bother you, or you just need to go find a different set of stories to play in. And that's where it's, again, it really boils down to the individuals and who they're working with and
Right.
who they're doing this stuff with.
It's also comes down to too is like GM's discretion, how they get to choose how they want to tell the story, and on top of that, it's just flavor text. It doesn't mean anything. It's just to help you come up with ideas so you can brainstorm on your own. If you don't like it, you can change it and make it whatever you want. I don't know. We're at this point right now where we're almost like, not only are we changing our history, we're changing our fictional characters, the characters that we grew up on, that like we created, we maybe have created as role models, or and it's, I don't know, that's a deeper conversation I want to have with my dad on, but it's crazy because we see it in everything now. We want to retcon everything to make it fit whatever person.
Well, and it's more than that, right? Like nothing can have a problematic tone to it, right?
Mhm.
But it's like, but if something is evil or has an evil origin, it can, it's usually by its very nature going to be problematic. But out of those problematic origins, you can have interesting stories to tell and growth for those groups out of that story. Again, Dritz came from what is a very problematic origin of people, but went on to tell an interesting story. And so, yeah, the origin of something might be problematic, might be, can be seen as, as problematic is the best way to put it. But just because that's the flavor text, right? Like what you said, just because that's the flavor text, just because that's what's in the book, you can take that and turn it into whatever you want. You can take that problematic origin and turn it into a more uplifting story of this is how they broke out of, whatever that origin is. This is how they grew from that horrific, because that's what happens in real life, right? In real life, you have all of these people, all of these groups that have gone through problematic origins, have gone through problematic experiences in life, and have grown to become something so much greater because, right, they have grown out of that history and become something greater now as compared to what they were. And that's a truly interesting and inspiring story, right? If everyone starts on the same level, and then everyone just excels at the same rate, okay, that's great, but it makes it an even more powerful story for someone to have been underneath that
And
and
achieve
it's
those things. Yeah,
and
just
achieve even more, right?
Mhm.
That is an even more inspiring story to tell.
Yep.
And again, so for some people, it can be triggering. It can be, you know, it can mess with them in terms of their own self. And at that point, it turns into, again, hey, you're dealing something that's dealing with a broad audience. So go talk to your GM, right? Go talk to whoever's running your game, and y'all talk through it and see if y'all can come to, again, assuming that you're friends, assuming that you've been with these people and that you trust them and they trust you and y'all all have an understanding of each other, you can come together and create whatever the hell you want out of it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I just don't know, man. I wonder as a parent. That's all I want Edward to enjoy the things that we enjoyed and have his own imagination and grow, have his own role models, the characters he likes, the people he looks up to. But it's is it going to be the same of what he loves now in the future?
I mean, it won't, right? All of
Yeah.
it, all of it always changes. It's just trying to find those things that he'll enjoy, right? I
Hmm.
mean, my kids like tons of stuff that I find completely annoying, but they like it. Will it change by the time they get older and they have kids and they try and share it with them? Probably, because there will be 8 reboots between now and then. But it. I don't know, man.
Yeah.
It kind of gets to a point where just if you're going to change a character so far, right? I think Neil Gaiman one time talked about, if Batman is dressed in a leather trench coat and is running around doing it, he's ceased to be Batman and
Hmm.
he's now a different character. And
Yep.
it's like, yeah, that's kind of the idea. Is once you have differentiated yourself enough from the original story that now it's no longer, it doesn't resemble the original story at all, right? Not even the slightest hint. Then what are you doing, right? Why are you still calling it Batman, and why are you not like calling it Dick Tracy now?
Yeah,
You
when he's
know?
not. Yeah, when
Yeah.
he's not,
Why?
all the sources of who he is not the same person, other than the fact his name is Bruce Wayne.
Yeah.
You know.
Or why not do that anymore? You know?
Yeah.
And so it and that's where, but I mean, that's where we constantly have new entertainment coming out, right? You have all these, you do have new stories. You do have new stories that come out. It's just the ones that are remakes get the bigger, eyes on, like the Rings of Power, right? Rings of Power had like a 25 million person viewership for the first 2 episodes within the first handful of days of that show coming out. Why? Because it's Lord of the Rings,
Mhm.
because it's Amazon, right? It's going to get all these eyes on it because it is an IP that people know and have history with and all that. But is it going to stand the test of time the way that the IP up to this point has?
That
I
remains to be seen. Yeah.
Yeah, it remains to be seen. I don't think so because it differs so greatly. But then you have other stuff like, just off the top of my head, John Wick, right? John Wick wasn't based on anything. That was someone who had a passion to tell a movie a certain way. And now look at this. We're going to have what, 5 movies? They've got a TV show starting, all this stuff coming out of just someone's passion project. And it just takes that. It takes someone out there taking the risk of going out and creating a passion project like I mean, that's where Gravity Falls came from, right? Gravity Falls,
Yeah.
fantastic show, right? Has all this awesome backstory and lore and characters, all these great things. And that's what it takes. It takes someone coming up with an idea and someone else taking a risk of putting that out there. And that's where these new things will come in. That's where these new stories come from. And that's where a lot of the good stuff comes from. And in the meantime, we just have to hope that the big companies don't screw with the IPs that we enjoy too much, right?
Yeah. Yep.
I've already seen some people saying, "Hey, all you people that were talking bad about the Hobbit movies, it's gonna be like Star Wars, right? Everyone hated the prequels until the sequels came out, and now suddenly the prequels are beloved by tons of people who were talking shit about them not but a decade ago." It's like some people are saying that that's what Rings of Power is going to do. All of a sudden, the Hobbit movies are going to be beloved. I'm like, no, those
No.
movies were terrible.
No.
I'm on record right now. I'm never going to say those movies were good. So
The difference is we had 10 years to come to love the prequels. I mean, so whereas when we got the next stuff, it was a sequel to what was like 40 years ago. And it was nothing like what we wanted at all. So, I mean, they could have just jumped a whole generation and not have Luke and Leia in it or whatever, and just told the story they wanted to. And then we would have been okay with that. But they tried to connect it to what everybody loved. It was like, we want the fan base from what this stuff that loved this stuff for 40 years, but
I
we
mean,
don't want
everybody
to actually give them what they want. We want to give it to the new audience that.
But they don't seem to have this understanding that the Star Wars fan base, all you have to do is have someone ignite a lightsaber that's blue and someone ignite a lightsaber that's red and have them fight in some kind of dark, place, and people will come and watch. People will come and watch and will enjoy. You don't have to show Luke and Leia and Han if you're not actually going to do anything with them.
Yeah, exactly. If you're not going to do anything with them,
you can avoid all the bullshit. You can avoid all that bullshit. Go tell whatever story you want to tell, and just remove the legacy portion of it, and people will come to enjoy it. Right? That's what happened with Rebels. That's what happened with The Mandalorian. That's what happened with all these other shows where it was like, hey, it's in this universe, but it has nothing to do with any of the characters that you actually know, at least to start with. Eventually it does, right?
Mm-hmm.
But at least to start with, it was, hey, we're going to draw you into this world by showing you just a different corner of what you knew and something interesting that happened there. And but again, that takes the studio willing to take a risk, right? Because I guarantee you,
writers, studios, producers, all that stuff. It takes them wanting to take that risk to do something new without having to piggyback off of the legacy of something that came before it. And yeah, that's my thing. So, but I think we did a really good job covering our feelings on the Hulk without really bashing it, because it's not about the fact that it's a woman's show. It's not about that it's not a really well developed or thought out show. It just seems like it's just a shoe-in so they can have something in the docket for Marvel, because they couldn't get enough time, because I think they felt that everything they've done up to this point hasn't been hitting off as well as they would like it to. So they thought that maybe She-Hulk would be a change of pace, because it's definitely different than anything we've gotten so far, especially with the whole fourth wall breaking, which I know is part of the character, but it's almost like, is she telling the story? It'd be understandable as like it starts out with her narration of like how things are going, instead of it just being us following her until she goes, well, and
it's implemented so weirdly. Like it's not like she's doing it consistently. It's just it's like the writers all of a sudden remember in the middle of an episode, oh yeah, she's supposed to be doing a fourth wall breaking thing. Let's have her do it real quick, and then we won't ever do it again for the rest of the episode.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like with the fight with the Thunderbolt. She looks at the camera. Oh yeah, and she remembered she was She-Hulk.
Yeah. So, but I mean, like stuff like that's great. But if you don't do it, it would be better if she would do it more consistently, right? Like if she was multiple times during an episode, instead of a long thing where it was just like while she's in the in the trial talking about the one idiot dude, and then he stands up to object, and then as he starts talking, we don't hear what he's saying. We just go back to her, and she sits there and starts talking about how y'all have already seen this jackass, right? Like, you know what he's like. Y'all know that, and goes back to her, and then it fades back to him, as he's wrapping up whatever stupid defense he was making for himself, right? Like if it was just implemented more consistently and better,
Mhm.
then it would make sense. But it just happens like once an episode out of nowhere. Just all of a sudden she'll turn and break the fourth wall for 2 seconds
Yeah.
and then go. And it doesn't happen again for the rest of the episode.
She did it in the bar too,
Yeah.
where
Yeah.
she stuck her head in from the side.
Yeah, but like stuff like that, it happens.
It was
so
just
fast. But because it's not consistently done enough,
yeah.
My brain is focusing on the episode, and then she'll do it, and I'm like, oh, that was a fourth wall thing, whatever, right? It's again, it's so lazily implemented that it's not. It doesn't complement the show as much as it could if they would just utilize it more. But in order to utilize it more, they need to focus more on the story that a singular story that they're trying to tell.
Well, this may be an inflection point. You think about it, because the fact that they're like at a point right now that everything they've done so far hasn't done really well as expected. And did y'all see the article right now, or that came out I think today, about Taika Waititi not possibly directing any more Marvel or Thor movies just because of how bad the reception for Love and Thunder is?
I heard that supposedly he was out on the next Thor movie. I hadn't heard details or what it was about. I just saw a headline somewhere that Taika Waititi out on next Thor movie. I was like, oh, I mean, I know Thor, it like barely broke even.
Yeah,
I think. I mean,
I think
they're just rushing everything. It feels like at this point, because like one of my big issues, and the more I think about it, the more I don't understand why they did this. But like the second Doctor Strange movie, he talks about how Mordru, or however the hell you say his name, had been trying to kill him. But in none of the movies, none of the TV series, nothing has established that Doctor Strange and Mordru came into contact with one another after the events of the first movie. But for some reason, Doctor Strange knows that, said, oh yeah, he's been trying to kill me. When did that happen? No, we had to get really quick to the multiverse and Wanda and and America Chavez and all this other bullshit. It's like, but where did that other movie go? Where did the movie where we would have had Doctor Strange fighting Mordru, where did that happen? We kind of got it in the Multiverse of Madness, but not in any kind of, satisfying context of it. It was, hey, here's this other completely different version of Mordru that hates Doctor Strange, because apparently every version of Mordru hates Doctor Strange, even though that's not how a multiverse works.
Yeah.
And they just, I don't know. I don't know where it's coming from, because Marvel did such a good job for such a long time of, we're going to take our time and tell these stories and hit the story beats that we want leading up to, the big finale. And now it just seems they're just trying to burn through contracts and get to the next set of heroes. And I don't know, man. It's weird.
I think a lot of it has to do too is, like, if you look at it, it's very similar to what was going on with Disney scrambling because of how bad The Last Jedi and Solo and The Rise of Skywalker was. And everything that they were pushing out at the time just seemed to not be hitting the right mark. And then, they took a step back, and then they did The Mandalorian, which seemed to be the best decision they could have done to try to start saving Star Wars. Besides removing Kathleen Kennedy slowly as shit to do, considering the fact, like we said previous episode, about the fact that it was supposed to be Luke that was the person that Obi-Wan was going to go rescue.
Yeah.
And it makes sense because she never knew who Obi-Wan or Ben was at all.
But I mean, but that goes back to, again, kind of what I was talking about with the Rings of Power in this one, is a fundamental, I don't know if it's a lack of understanding or just an unwillingness to understand the motivation of the characters at the time period that you're telling the story. Obi-Wan should not be going off planet to go save Leia on a solo mission because his duty is to protect Luke. Organa's duty was to protect Leia.
Yes.
So
yes.
the inherent disregard for Obi-Wan's motivation at that time is what they use to tell the story that they want to tell. Galadriel not having the maturity that she should have at the time that she is in the Rings of Power. They use that to tell the story they want to tell. They keep changing this, they keep altering it. And again, with Doctor Strange, they missed the chance to tell a story. It's like what DC did with Batman versus Superman. You missed a chance to tell a story of the world falling in love with Superman to make BVS make sense when he dies and the world goes into mourning, right? Because you didn't tell that story of Superman, the payoff in BVS didn't make sense. The payoff then in the beginning of Justice League doesn't make sense, because we go from the end of Man of Steel, when everyone is terrified of him, an entire American city was just leveled by people that were directly related to Superman, to suddenly the entire world loves him because he saved a couple of people from a flood one time, right? Like, because of that, now the entire world loves him? No, you needed a movie in between there to show that. And that's where Marvel is starting to go away from showing that movie that DC didn't show. And now they're starting to go towards DC where, well, we just need to get to this next thing. And whether that next thing is the next version of this hero, or they just want to get to a completely different type of story that they want to tell, I don't know. I don't understand why Marvel is suddenly speeding up this game out of nowhere, right? That's what it feels like. It feels like they're speeding up what they're doing to get to an end result.
They're trying to make up for COVID.
Yeah, that's what they. Yeah, that's a good point.
They had all that time for COVID to write all these great stories, but they sat on their hands because they couldn't do anything, because of couldn't be here, couldn't be there, couldn't do whatever. They could have taken time to write the story. So now they're trying to make up for that lost time by jamming everything in our gullet.
Well, and that's what's the crazy thing about the Multiverse of Madness, right? Multiverse of Madness, the guy who wrote the script for that, he wrote one script, but then they completely like threw it out with the bathwater when COVID came. And then going into Multiverse of Madness, they basically had the beginning written, and then they were writing the script as they went with that movie. Why? Like you said, y'all had a year to sit down and fine-tune this story. Why didn't you do that? Why didn't you spend more time devoting yourself to explaining these events than what you did?
Well, and it just seems like there's this push to, they don't know what they're doing. They don't really have a goal in mind. They're throwing in hints here and there for like multiple different like possibilities. It's like, here's a red herring and here's a red herring, but then there's not like a overarching goal to it, it seems. And it's displaces the audience who are like expecting this level of care and structure with what we got before, Endgame, with this new next two phases. And it's like, what are we missing here? And it's, yeah, of course we've had the changes of the Bobs, not Dave Filoni, but Kevin Feige is still there. So I don't understand what's the difference between.
Well, it makes me wonder if Kevin Feige was actually the mastermind behind it, or if he just wound up taking the credit for it, right? Like, was it really Feige who orchestrated this big thing, or was the skeleton of this plan already there when he stepped in, and then he just kind of helped
until the point of what we're at right now
on that route? And now that they've accomplished that, now they're kind of out in the wind, and they're like, oh yeah, now there's these other kind of things that we want to sort of get to, but no one has a fully thought out concrete plan to get there, right? That's what it feels like. It feels like Marvel is all of a sudden kind of rudderless with what they're doing.
They're just going back in circles. Yeah, they lost one of their oars, and they're just kind of like in a circle. You know, and
mean,
back
still
they just can't get to the land.
they're still in a
Fair.
good spot, but a lot of this good spot that they're in is because they're still, you know, coasting on the successes of what they've done before. And you know, and that's where I'm kind of curious to see where they kind of go moving forward, right? Like if they're able to right the ship, right? Is Wakanda Forever going to be able to do that?
Hmm. Well, and then
Um,
I'm excited for Spider-Man, but technically that's not even Marvel at this point.
I was about to say, dude, if you're talking
Yeah.
about Into the Spider-Verse has nothing to do with them.
No. There are talks about the next Spider-Man movie being a crossover with Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man and Tom Holland. I was just reading about that like a couple weeks ago.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, I'm more excited for what Sony's doing with Spider-Man than I am with Marvel doing with any of their characters right now.
Well, it kind of goes back to what I've talked about before, right? Where once you're a part of a connected universe and you have to worry about what other people are doing, it cuts down on the experimentation that you can do because like people have pointed out that the Thor from Love and Thunder, like the Thor from Taika Waititi's movies is very different from the Thor from the rest of the MCU. He is a completely different character in a lot of ways. So, how much can you do that? How much can you drastically swing between characters in movies without it starting to affect how people view the character? And that's where again, that's one of the drawbacks of having an interconnected universe. Now you can't really experiment with a character concept anymore. It was like all these people that were freaking out about how what they didn't understand how Robert Pattinson fit into the Ben Affleck Batman movies. It's like he doesn't.
He doesn't. He's a
He
standalone.
doesn't. He's a completely different Batman, a completely different universe. Stop interconnecting all this shit and just go watch this movie for what it is. Stop, unless they are explicitly telling you that all of this is connected and here's how it's connected, just go watch it for what it is. And if later down the line they try and figure out a way to shoehorn it in together, then we can all judge them for it then. But until that point, just enjoy the movie for what it is, right? Like if Thor: Love and Thunder was by itself, I still probably wouldn't watch it because there's way too much dumb humor in it. But you would have less people complaining about the way Thor behaves in it as compared to the way he behaves in everything else in the MCU, right? You would remove that complaint, you would remove that problem with those movies because then you could just point to say, hey, this isn't that Thor, this is Taika Waititi's Thor, and that's why he's different. That's why he is the way that he is. But because it's all an interconnected universe, you have this weird, you know, disconnect between characters.
Well, and that's the thing too. And we can wrap this up here because I know
sorry,
Colin's got to go, but this is a really good conversation. I want to keep it going, but I don't want to keep Colin up. But to add to this is that they've already set in fail safes for this. You know, you think about like you have the multiverse, so maybe this Thor isn't even our Thor. He could be a stand-in.
He could be Party Thor.
Yeah. And then on top of that, you have what Wanda did with changing the reality and how that could have affected everything. Plus, you have the scrolls. You have the scrolls that could be technically another part of this because this technically this may not even be Thor. So, I mean, you know, considering we've already done that now with, Nick Fury. So there's a lot of possibilities they could get themselves out of this problem. And I guess I wonder if they're like, let's just see how things stick. We're just throwing balls and ideas at a wall, hoping things stick. So that way, when Secret Invasion happens, they could just kind of like go, well, all this stuff you guys didn't like was actually a bunch of scrolls. And these other characters are here. It's like Wolverine having his animanium ripped out of him. That wasn't actually him. He was a scroll.
I was about to say, it's one of the greatest cop-outs in comic book history of, hey, all these characters that y'all have been complaining about for years, well, that wasn't the real one.
No, yeah.
Here's the real one that you liked from,
30 or 40 years ago. No.
that we just brought back because
Yeah.
reasons.
So exactly. That's exactly. All right. So this is the time of the episode where we're going to do the shout out. This episode, I'm going to give the shout out to Omega Ace Gaming. He's a good friend of mine. He's actually working to study to become a teacher. He's hopefully going to be taking his test pretty soon here for his license and all that stuff. But he's a big Castlevania fan, loves the series. He plays them all the time. He's working on trying to NDR them. You should check him out. I'll have the description down below for his channel. Give him some love. But guys, we really hope you enjoyed this episode of the podcast. I know we kind of like really got back into storytelling again and the things that kind of either move us or remove us from whatever media form that we're viewing or watching. And I really did want to talk a little bit more about like Ghostwire Tokyo, but I didn't get a chance to do that because we kind of went off on a tangent, which we always do. But maybe next week I can kind of talk about that because I want to talk about some of the games we've been playing as well. But in the meantime, everyone have a great one. Catch you later.